start our recording. And again, I'd like to welcome you all to our final session for On Earth Peace Day of celebration. It has been a really good day together with lots of different activities and ways to connect with each other. As a reminder, some of you know this already, but this is also a fundraising day for us. So we are inviting you all, if you're able to donate to On Earth Peace, that's helpful and welcome. And we are hoping to make a goal of $2,500 for the day. So I'm going to just stick the link in the chat for folks. We'll do it again at the end of the session. And we're so grateful for those of you who have already given today. Yeah, thank you. So today for our keynote, I'm excited to have community peacemaker teams here with us. On Earth Peace is a sponsoring body of CPT, and I have the privilege of being on the steering committee and connecting with their work on a regular basis. And so we are really grateful for the opportunity to hear from CPT Palestine, from Abdallah Maraka, to share about the work that's happening there and also learn more about the importance of anti-militarism and anti-war efforts in the work for peace and justice. I am actually going to turn it over to Haya, who is our On Earth Peace's Palestine Justice intern in Gaza, and just acknowledgement, it is the middle of the night in Palestine. And so grateful for you all for being here with us at 1 a.m. But Haya, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can introduce Abdallah, and Haya will be moderating the keynote for us today.
Sure, thank you, Marie. Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing okay. So for the keynote, Abdallah Maraka would be the speaker on behalf of the CPT. He is a Palestinian and currently located in Al Khalil, Hebron. He is a graduate of Hebron University with a degree of accounting and business administration. He has been working with the CPT since 2020, and before that he served as a full-time tour guide. So, and his pronouns are obviously he and him. So, Abdullah, would you like to unmute and start sharing your screen? Please feel free to do so.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Haya. Thank you.
No, but go ahead.
Thanks for having me. So my session today I will give a presentation about our activities in CPT Palestine in general, and I will share a video from one of the regular things that we have in our daily tasks as CPTers located in Al Khalil in Hebron. So can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, everyone. So thanks for having me again. As Haya mentioned, my name is Abdallah. I've been working with CPT since October 2020. I've been living in Hebron since 2002. Before that, I was living with my family in Saudi Arabia, but then we moved back to Palestine in 2002. And I joined CPT during the COVID pandemic because there was a need for CPTers in Hebron, especially locals. After all the foreigners, CPTers, they were not allowed to come back to Palestine. So, as you know all, or maybe if you don't, our vision in CPT, that we are a world of communities, that together we embrace the diversity of a human family and live justly and peacefully with all the creation. Now in CPT, our mission in CPT Palestine mainly is building partnership with the local community in general in order to transform violence and oppression. And CPT is a Palestinian-led organization mainly CPT Palestine. We support the local community, and we are in direct partnership with the Palestinian partners in any actions they are planning to do, either in H2 area, which is the old city of Hebron, or on the outskirts of Hebron, mainly South Hebron Hills, which has recently been under threat by the Israeli army on a regular basis. Now, our history in CPT Palestine. CPT Palestine considered one of the oldest mission now. And the reason for CPT to be in Hebron, mainly in Palestine, because of 1994 massacre, when an Israeli-American reserve soldier committed a brutal attack inside the Tomb of Patriarchs, or Al-Ibrahimi Mosque, the oldest mosque in Hebron. And the result was 29 Palestinians were killed, more than 100 people get wounded, which has led the Israeli army to divide the mosque building itself to two sections, a section for Palestinian Muslims where they can use it as a mosque, and the other section for Israeli settlers where they succeeded to establish a Jewish synagogue inside the building. And because of that, CPT has had the first delegation to Hebron in 1995 in February. Then 2 months later, in the same year, in 1995, in April, Hebron municipality decided to invite CPT to provide a presence in Hebron for an observation. And the first team served in Hebron, it was in June 1995. Now, in order to understand the complexity of Hebron city, we always say that Hebron has one of the most complicated situations in the country. If you ever visited Palestine or if you are planning to come, every Israeli settlement in the country, mainly they are located on the outskirts of Hebron. But the difference in Hebron, today you can find 5 Israeli settlements, 2 huge military bases, 1 Jewish yeshiva school, all of them located in what used to be the heart of Hebron, or the old city of Hebron, what used also to be the main commercial and industrial hub. So the presence of those settlements in the middle of the biggest Palestinian city in the West Bank disconnected Palestinians from Palestinians themselves. And in order to provide security for a couple of hundred settlers living in the city, more than 700,000 Palestinians have to live under the mercy of a couple of hundred Israeli settlers. Now, Hebron city itself, Hebron district, the city and the villages, it's around 711,000 Palestinians living there. The city only, it's around 200,000 people. And today, Hebron considered the second largest Palestinian city in the country. If you see this slide, this is a timeline for the beginning of the settlements in the city. So in 1967, the 6 Days War happened between 3 Arab countries and Israel, which is led to the Israeli army to occupy the rest of East Jerusalem, West Bank, Gaza Strip, Golan Heights, and Sinai Desert. Directly after the Israeli army occupied those 5 areas, they were considered by the international law as an occupied territories, which prevents the Israelis to allow Israeli civilians to move and to live in those places. Otherwise, it will be considered as a violation for international law. But also, as we know, Israel doesn't follow the international law. So 1 year later, after the 6 Days War, on March 1968, the first group of settlers arrived to the country. 120 American Zionist Jews arrived to Hebron from Brooklyn, New York. They checked in inside a Palestinian hotel located in the northern side of the city. For 2 weeks, they refused to leave because they justified their presence as they finally succeeded to come back to what they call it the promised land. And since the country from that time until today is under full Israeli military control, no one could evacuate them. but the Israeli army decided to provide the enough protection for them inside that hotel by preventing Palestinian owners from using it in that time. But then, a couple of months later, around June 1968, that group were evacuated to the eastern side of the city. And 2 years later, in 1970s, the first Israeli settlement in Hebron were established, which is called today Kiryat Arba settlement. It's considered today one of the biggest Israeli settlements in the southern side of the West Bank. 8,000 Israeli settlers living there today. 80% of them are American. The remaining 20% are Australian, Argentinian, and French settlers. But this settlement is still located outside the city borders, mainly on the eastern side of the city. But the main idea was to establish settlements inside the old city, the place where the tomb of patriarchs or Al-Ibrahimi Mosque is located. So a couple of years later, in 1979, the first Palestinian building inside the old city were occupied, which is called Beit Hadassah building. But this building, historically, the history for that building, it's owned by, it was built back in 1863 when the country was under the Ottoman Empire by the Iraqi Jewish community who used to live in Hebron. And it was built as a medical center and it was serving in the city as a medical center running by the Jewish community who lived in Palestine, but it lasted like this until 1929, when the country became under British control. When the country was under the British control during the 20s, in 1929, unfortunately, a brutal massacre was committed against the Palestinian Jews by the British soldiers and some Palestinians who involved in that attack, which has led to almost 67 Palestinian Jews who get killed. And the remaining Palestinian Jews who survived that attack, they were evacuated by force by the British army outside of the country. A couple of years later, and after 1967, the first excuse for the Western Zionist Jews arriving to the country, linking themselves to the old Arab Palestinian Jewish community. And this is the main reason why in 1979, 40 American women succeeded to occupy this building, which is used to belong to a Palestinian Jewish community. But after 1979, settlements started to expand in the middle of the city. 1 year later, in 1981, the old bus station were occupied. Later on, the army changed it to a military base. Then in 1982, another Palestinian building that used to be a Palestinian school were occupied, which is today a yeshiva school for Jewish students. Then in 1983, also, another Palestinian home were occupied, which is now called Abraham Avinu settlement, the biggest settlement in the old city of Hebron. And in 1984, the last Israeli settlement were built, which is called Tel Rumeda. And in 1984, that was the last Israeli settlement built in the city. After that, settlers expanded their settlements outside the city borders. But only on March 2020, when the whole world was busy with the quarantine, the Israeli settlers succeeded to establish another 2 new settlements by occupying another 2 Palestinian homes. But after 1984 until 1987, life was up and down between Palestinians and settlers. In 1987, the first Palestinian uprising started, which is known the First Intifada. And the result of it was an agreement that signed in 1993 called Oslo Accord, where they divided the West Bank and Gaza Strip to 3 different areas. Area A, under Palestinian control, Area B, under Palestinian and Israelis control, and then Area C, which is completely controlled by the Israelis. But unfortunately, in 1993 agreement, Hebron, the Israelis refused to negotiate about Hebron, and they decided to postpone the negotiations to 1995 agreement. That was which is supposed to be Oslo Agreement 2, but for many reasons, that agreement was not signed again. Because for the extremist settlers in the country, Oslo Agreement was considered too friendly agreement with Palestinians, and there was different reactions to it. The first reaction took place in Hebron in 1994, when the Israeli-American reserve soldier committed his attack inside Al Ibrahimi Mosque and managed to kill 29 Palestinians. The second reaction took place in 1995, when the Israeli minister Yitzhak Rabin, who signed that agreement with Palestinians, he was assassinated by an Israeli settler in Tel Aviv, which has led the Israeli government to stop Oslo Agreement 2 from being signed, leaving Hebron under full Israeli military control until January 1997, when the worst agreement was signed for Hebron, which is known today as Hebron Protocol or Hebron Agreement. According to this agreement, unfortunately, the city were divided to two sections. The first one called Hebron 1 or H1, the Palestinian controlled side of the city, where today around 200,000 Palestinians living there. And that section of the city represents around 80% of Hebron. Then Hebron 2 or H2, and when we say H2, we mean by it three main things. The old city of Hebron, Al Ibrahimi Mosque or the Tomb of Patriarchs, the old commercial and industrial hub in the country. Altogether represent only 20% of the city, but this 20% located exactly in the middle of the district, which making any part controlling that section of Hebron being able to control the whole district from all directions, because it's located in the middle. Today, 40,000 Palestinians living in H2, around between 100 to maximum 400 Israeli settlers living in one street in 5 different settlements today, in addition to almost 2,500 Israeli soldiers, serving 24/7 to provide protection for a couple of hundred settlers living inside the city. The agreement was signed. 3 years later, the second Palestinian uprising started, known as the Second Intifada. The Israeli army decided to disconnect the Palestinian side from the Israeli controlled side of the city by creating checkpoints, road blockades, and they managed to establish, until today, 21 Israeli military checkpoints surrounding the old city and H2 area from all directions, which means Palestinians living there, they are forced to cross through those military checkpoints in order to reach their homes, or if they want to go to buy their basic needs from any grocery store, they have to leave to H1, the Palestinian controlled side of the city. Because in 2000, the Israeli military claims that it's not secure enough to keep allowing Palestinians to use the main commercial and industrial street, which is known as Al-Shuhada Street. So what the army did, in 2000, they decided to shut down 1,350 shops by closing the main entrances to them. They went to the market during one night of the Second Intifada. The market was closed. They decided to seal the entrances of their shops by using metal pieces, and they melted the entrances of their shops with oxygen and metal. Until today, those people has no right whatsoever to go back to their stores to open it. They still have their own personal stuff, their own merchandise inside their shops, which has led to a huge economical catastrophe in the city. 1 year later, in 2001, when the situation in the Second Intifada started to get really hard and hard, the army implemented something called the curfew procedure, preventing people from leaving their homes or opening their stores. And it lasted for almost 5 years until 2005 and 2006, which has led also to another economical catastrophe in the old neighborhoods in the old city of Hebron. After 2005, the Second Intifada was over. Then what happened? People went back only to the old city, to the place where they were allowed to go back. They opened their businesses, but there was no customers, no one trying to reach that area because of the violence that took place by settlers during the Second Intifada. So voluntarily, unfortunately, 900 Palestinian shops, they closed their stores and they left to the northern part of Hebron, mainly to H1, trying to find new businesses there. Then after 2005, until today, every single thing happening in the country, it will reflect directly in Hebron, because it's the place, the only place in the country where Israeli settlers living inside the city, not on the outskirts. But one of the worst things that happened also, it took place in 2019, in January, when the Israeli government decided to kick out one of the main humanitarian organizations in the country. It's called TIPH, the Temporary International Presence in Hebron, which is an NGO was created by 6 European countries after the massacre in Hebron in 1994. Their main job were to observe the situation in the old city and to write reports. But in January 2019, the Israeli Prime Minister in that time, Benjamin Netanyahu, decided not to renew their mandate, and they were forced to leave the city. And they were the only legal and official organization that was allowed to work in Hebron by the Israelis and by the Palestinian Authority. This is basically briefly about Hebron. Just a quick hint. If you feel that you don't understand anything about Hebron, that's okay. Hebron, as I mentioned before, it has one of the most complicated situations, but you can use it as a microcosm for the occupation. What's really happening in Hebron, it's happening in every Palestinian city, but the difference in Hebron, if you ever come here, you will be able to live this on a daily basis and to see it happening on the ground. The difference in the other Palestinian cities, you will not be exposed to it on the daily life in general. Now, what we do in CPT, Palestine team, one of the main things we do, it's called school run or the accompaniment work in general, mainly in the southern side of the old city. There is 2 main military checkpoints where around 350 Palestinian kids are forced to cross through those military checkpoints to reach their schools. There is a school compound that contains around 11 schools and 3 kindergartens. So when those children are crossing back through those checkpoints, and you know how kids normally when they go to school, they like to go with their friends. Normally when they leave any checkpoint, they are trying to cross together. But normally, when they cross together, the Israeli army considered the gathering of those children as a security threat. So the reaction to it, most of the time, they will start firing sound grenades or tear gas toward those children. And the reaction from the children will be throwing stones at them. Sometimes the children try to throw stones at the soldiers who's inside a bulletproof checkpoint. And we're talking about children, their ages between 6 to 11. So most of the time when they try to throw stone at a checkpoint, it will not reach the checkpoint. But the reaction from the army will be violent. They will storm the area of the schools with tear gas and sound grenades. In many cases, they will go inside the school to arrest children. So in this case, we will be presented every morning at 7 a.m. when children go to school and in the afternoon. We're trying to intervene if we could by connecting our partners just to make sure if a child is getting detained, to react fast, just to make sure that they will not spend a lot of time in detention, or if they have to be detained, we need to interact directly with it. Now I will share with you a video about the school accompaniment that we do every morning.
Abdullah, are you playing the video?
Yeah, I'm playing.
Because the screen is frozen, just to let you know.
Sorry, just a minute.
Oh, what's up? I don't speak Hebrew. Where are you? Hebron. Yeah. I'm Ramallah.
We can, like, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if it's only my screen, but we can hear the voice, but the screen's frozen, right?
Yeah, we can't see the video. We can just hear the words.
So you can't see it?
Mm-mm.
We only can hear it. Maybe if you stop sharing and share it again, it would work. And make sure to include the voice.
So you only can hear the voice, right?
Yes.
I will try now. Can you see it now?
Oh, what's up? I don't speak Hebrew.
I think you may need to stop sharing completely and then restart the share. Yeah.
Does it work now?
Yes.
It's working.
I don't speak Hebrew. Where are you? Hebron. Yeah. أنا من رام الله. We are now in Hebron, in the southern side of the city, exactly at As-Salaima checkpoint, where students need to cross through a military checkpoint to go to their schools.
What are we doing here? Usually we do 1 hour of monitoring the checkpoints, and when we say monitoring, we monitor the children, teachers, and people accessing or going through the checkpoint, making sure it goes smoothly. If it doesn't go smoothly, we try to intervene if we can. Most of the times we can't. And I try to document everything. Sometimes we help children to pass through if they get scared or if it gets closed. At the checkpoint, we wait for them. This is one of the checkpoints we cover. There are other checkpoints that other colleagues are covering at the moment.
See the military checkpoint. This is the main entrance to go inside H2 area. And from that gate is where children need to cross to leave the checkpoint so they can go to their schools, which is located at the end of this street.
Okay, so this is, we did it during one of our school runs that we do in the morning. So the other part of the accompaniments work that we do is called the occasional accompaniments. And this is mainly taking place during the olive harvest season. We get calls from our partners, especially the ones who own fields of olives, and they are living close to a settlement area or in a restricted area that's surrounded with settlements and settlers living around them. So what happened during every harvest, every season, olive season harvest, settlers will come and attack people who's trying to cultivate their olives. Some people own pieces of land in a restricted area where the army prevent them to come and to have access. They give them access during a specific days for a specific hours. So they call us and they ask us to be with them just to document if anything happened, and we provide help also with them during the cultivation process. Now, the other part of our accompaniments, it's during emergencies. So we respond to the emergency directly, whether it was a home raid, a demonstrations, or an arrest. And we also participate in the demonstration, which is organized by our partners in the city. Normally they call us and they inform us about an activity or an action they are planning to do. So they ask us all the time to be presented. In the house demolitions, it's taking place recently a lot in South Hebron Hills, which is a Palestinian area located in what's so-called Area C, where is a lot of Palestinian communities living there, but they're not allowed to build houses or to add an extensions to their homes. So the Israeli army issue what's so-called a military order for demolition, and they deliver it to the families, but they don't select a specific time. So the family have to live with this fear every single day, every single night, that maybe on the same day the army will come or the bulldozers will come to destroy their homes. So in this case, in these cases, when we get calls from our Palestinian partners' families, we try to go there to stay with the family. Sometimes we have to sleep over for 1 or 2 nights with the family just to make sure that if something happened, we will be presented there. Adding to our field work, we have different projects, which is ongoing for the moment in CPT Palestine. The first project, it's called Through Their Lens, which is a project targeting the Palestinian children between 12 to 16 years old who lives in the old city. And in this age, it's very important because in this time of their lives, they will start to develop their own feelings, to understand more about what they want to be or what they want to do without any external pressure, whether it was from society or from their families. So we we started with this project during the pandemic. Now we have the third group of students. Normally each group, they will be with us for 6 months. We meet with them once every week to have different workshops, and the topics for those workshops, normally they are decided by the students themselves. They choose the topic that they want to talk about. We also distribute cameras for them, and every session we do every week, we give them a homework about the same session, and we ask them to write 1 or 2 paragraphs and to take pictures that represent the same topic or the thing that they want to talk about. Then we translate this and we publish it on our social media platforms and through our mailing list. We are now working with the third group. In 2 months, this group will be over and we'll start with the fourth one, hopefully. The other project that we have is called Stories Within Stones. So this is an idea started in 2020, and the main goal of it is trying to document the collective memory for some buildings in the old city that's been confiscated by the army or settlers, or it's under threat of getting confiscated. And we're trying to create our own narrative, which is completely different from what the Israeli side is trying to promote for the same buildings. We document, we organize a lot of interviews with Palestinians who have memories in specific buildings. For instance, there is a Palestinian school, it's called Osama ibn al-Muqaddas School. It was occupied in 1982 by the Israeli settlers. Now it's a yeshiva school for settler students. So we went and we met with Palestinians from the old city who studied in that old Palestinian school when it was a school. And we just talked with them about their memories, how they remember the school, and what do they feel when they see the school now in front of them. It's only a few meters, but they can't have access to it. And we're trying to leave a database or a documentation tools for the new generations about buildings that they don't know anything about it. But instead of doing it in a historical way, we're trying to make the story of those buildings alive through the collective memory of people who witnesses those buildings in general. Now, documentation and reporting. What we do, mainly we have a school report every semester. After every semester of a school, with the data that we collect, whether it was the violence that was committed by soldiers or settlers against students, and the numbers of students who's crossing the checkpoint, the increase of violence. All this documentation that we did, we normally publish it in a report in every semester, and we send it through our mailing list. The other thing, we have a monthly newsletter that contains 2 articles normally written by 2 team members from Palestine team, in addition to 5 or 6 pictures in general, a photo caption about a very important events or things happened in the city of Hebron during that month. Part of our work also advocacy that contains different things. Anything we document on a daily basis, you can find it on our social media platform, Instagram, Facebook. Mainly, we are trying to share everything that's happening on a daily basis, as well as we organize webinars. And after COVID, webinars became a very important tool. And those are the names of many webinars we organize, which is also, you can find them on YouTube. If you are interested, also you can watch it. And we organize campaigns. One of the campaigns we did last year, it was targeting a Palestinian school in South Hebron Hills, where a military order was issued trying to destroy that building. So we launched this campaign together with our local partners, asking our partners all over the world to raise awareness about that school by holding a sign written on it, Save Qassa School, and stop the demolition. And it was helpful, not because of our campaign, but with the effort of the local community, who also decided to take this case to the Israeli court, and they succeeded to stop the demolition for a couple of years. But now they need to continue their legal struggle. We need to continue the legal struggle within the Israeli court system. And we are part also of one of a long-term campaign, which is called Defund Racism. So mainly this campaign is targeting different organizations, mainly American organizations, that use charitable money in order to fund illegal acts that contradict with the international and humanitarian laws. One of those organizations, it's called Hebron Fund, which is based in Brooklyn, New York City, sorry. So what we're trying to do here through this campaign is to put pressure on the Attorney General of New York City to start an official investigation about that organization, because they are breaking the American charitable law which is clearly said that charitable money cannot be used to fund illegal acts that contradict with the international and international humanitarian laws. But what Hebron Fund is doing is collecting charitable money from US citizens, sending this money directly to the settlers who lives in Hebron, who use it in every single illegal act by occupying homes, harassing people on a daily basis, organizing a lot of events, especially during the celebrations in Hebron where they attack people. So if this campaign is successful and the Attorney General decided to open an investigation, this could be a tool to stop the rest of organization who's doing this. We're doing this campaign together with our partner, which is an organization called Good Shepherd Collective. And if you visit the website, defendracism.org, you will see all the organizations that using charitable money in order to fund illegal acts in Palestine against Palestinians. Now, how you can get involved? Through different ways, mainly through our delegations. So during pandemic, the delegations stopped, but now we are planning a new delegation that maybe will start to happen in November or December this year. So in the delegation, what you can do, you can sign up for it and you can come and spend 2 weeks in Palestine. 1 week will be in Jerusalem and Bethlehem. And the other week, you will spend the time with Palestine team doing the accompaniment work that we are doing. So it will be part of the team activities in general. The other thing, you can participate in our webinars or workshop we organize online that you can know about it through our social media platforms and our mailing list. Also, you can sign up for the mailing list that we have through our website to be up to date about everything that's happening in our team. This is briefly about what we do in CPT Palestine for the moment.
So thank you so much, Abdullah, for your well-put presentation. We really appreciate the time and effort you put into that. And I hope that everyone was able to get and catch on what Abdullah presented. If you have any question, please feel free to unmute and share a question or write it in the chat box. And I'll be happy just to read out your questions in the chat box. If you have any question regarding the Hebron timeline, about the checkpoints, the video, or how to get involved, please feel free. It doesn't necessarily have to be a question. You can just leave a comment.
I think everyone is processing right now.
I know. It was a lot to process, actually. The video, it made me tear up.
So can I ask questions?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, I really will take time to appreciate Abdallah for such a wonderful presentation. And, that gives me another feeling. And I go back to the days when I was with the team in Hebron. And I can't imagine, but my question is, within the time of the COVID stuff and up to date, how has it been with the settler talk? Is it still very regular or they stopped it?
Actually, since COVID, it was the golden period, as I call it, for settlers. So before COVID, the settlers used to have something called settlers incursion, where they stormed the old city every Saturday to harass people, and as they claimed to have a tour. This is the only thing that stopped during COVID, and they didn't storm the city. But on the other hand, the violence increased, especially in the restricted area during the quarantines when no one is allowed to walk or to leave their homes. Settlers, they had the privilege to go around and to attack people inside their homes without any accountability. The second thing, as I mentioned, since March 2020, the beginning of the official quarantine time in Palestine, 1 week later after the quarantine, the Israeli military decided to dismantle the old military base. And Paul, if you've been with CPT Palestine, I'm talking about the military base that you can see it from the rooftop. They removed old caravans, and now they build a huge construction for the army, a huge building from 3 floors. And the other thing, 2 new settlements were established next to Al-Ibrahimi Mosque. Those 2 settlements, originally, they are 2 Palestinian homes that they were occupied back in 2015, 2016. But according to an Israeli decision from the Israeli court, they decided to close those 2 buildings and not allow even the settlers to use it until they finish the court trials. But in March 2020, all of us, we were surprised that settlers were allowed to come back to those closed buildings. They were abandoned, and they started a renovation process, and they settled down inside those 2 new homes. Adding to that, different restrictions, different laws, not official laws, but in every checkpoint, there is new laws that the soldiers come up with on the spot, with one main goal, is to harass people on a daily basis. What I say, after COVID, it's became even harder than before the quarantine or the COVID pandemic. And it seems that the Israelis have this attitude that, yes, we have the power, no one can do accountability, so we can continue to keep doing this. Does this answer your question?
Perfectly. I just got new updates, and that is sad to hear that. Abdallah, I just appreciate what you're doing on the ground. Please keep on, and extend my greetings to Tatil and Mona, unlike the team in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for your question. Thank you, Abdullah, for answering. A column wrote on the chat box, when children get arrested or detained, what does getting them out entail? Could you?
Okay, so in this scenario, in this case, there is different scenarios. So basically, one of the schools in the school compounds, it's under the UNRWA control, the United Nations. So if one of the children from that school get detained, directly we call the principal of that school, directly we call the head of UNRWA office in Jerusalem. And what she can do, they can contact the Israeli directly. And this will avoid us a lot of time, so the child can be detained. This is if only the child was from the UNRWA school. If the child was from another school, our process is like this. The first thing we call an office, which is for the Palestinian Authority. It's called the DCO office, District Coordination Office, who will contact the Israeli military offices, the coordination office. And if the child is less than 13, 12 years old, it will be easy to release him or her. But most of the time, this process takes like 1 or 2 hours. So in the moment when the soldiers get on a child, we try to interact in this specific time, especially on the way from the junction of the school to the checkpoint. In this way, we try to put ourselves in the middle if we can. And this is, we decided on the spot. If we see the soldiers are not really aggressive, directly, we will decide to intervene, trying to talk with the soldier in a way. And it happened in 3 cases, happened with me personally, that we managed to talk with the soldier and to release the child before the child was transferred behind the checkpoint, which is a place we can't reach it. Now, in most cases, yes, the children will be released, even if they are released 1 or 2 days later. But as soon as we try to intervene and to release them very fast, will save them a lot of trauma that they will suffer from it for the coming years. Now, if we couldn't manage to help any child to get released, we try to get in touch with their families. Normally, we try to delay the process of transferring the child from the checkpoint to the military base by calling their families and coming down directly to the checkpoint. And we stay at the checkpoint and we don't leave until we know what's happening with the child. The other way how the children are released is through the DCI, the Defense Children International. They are really working hard and they are successful in every time we contact them. They manage to release the child directly. If they couldn't, directly they hire an Israeli lawyer or a Palestinian lawyer who will go with the child to the detention center or to the court if they transfer them to the court. Does this answer the question, or should I clarify more?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
I have a question, if I may, please.
Yeah, of course, sure.
Yes, you mentioned of course, inevitable trauma experienced by children who are detained, and especially if they are incarcerated. I'm hoping the answer is yes. Some plan, some program, some way or ways to address that trauma for these children. Some way to help them work through it, maybe art therapy, music therapy, talking therapy. Are there any supports such as that in place, perhaps? And thank you very much, Abdallah.
In a place, it's not impossible, but it's not possible at the moment when they are released, because they will be released and they will be still in shock. But what we do, we're trying to keep follow up with them and their families especially. And we are in direct contact with the families all the time if they have a child who was released. And if the family decided feeling that the child is having some trauma or problems, we try to refer them to one of 2 main organizations, Doctors Without Borders, MSF, or the YMCA, and the DCI also. Those are the 3 main parts. We're trying to refer people to them because they have an experts who could intervene directly. But of course, if the family accepted this, normally we need, in all the cases, we need to get the family approval, and we need to involve the family when we are referring someone to one of those organizations.
Very much.
Yes, Viv, I can see your hand. Do you have any question?
Abdallah, the kind of work that you are doing is so draining and so difficult it feels. How do you and the people that you're working with, how do you maintain your emotional and spiritual depth to do that kind of work?
This is a very hard and deep question, but thanks for asking. Yeah, like one of the things in Palestine team now, and this is how we feel the difference now, since we are all speaking Arabic now. So we have a very, very weird way of sarcasm, especially in a hard situation. And most of the time we are using jokes as a way to reveal our stress, especially when coming back from a hard field work or a hard visit. So all the time we have this way of cheering up the team is through jokes. Recently we have a tradition in Palestine team. We do a fashion show in the office only when we have a very down moment. One of our colleagues, he's amazing. He all the time just grab any stuff from the office and we start do a fashion show. It's only a couple of minutes. We watch sometimes 5 or 10 minutes video of a stand-up comedian that will cheer us up. And this has helped us, even if it's very small things, but on a daily basis, it helped us to continue. And of course, one of the things that personally makes me very energetic, we got a dog at the office. His name is Echo. So he's the joy of the office. But one thing also I can add, that maybe our work that we do right now, we don't see any outcome from it on the ground directly. But the deep belief that one day, sooner or later, like what we are doing right now, will help other people, will help the new generations in the future. Hopefully, we will not reach to a level that new generations will have to go through what we are going. But if we don't see the outcome on now, we just keep reminding ourselves that this is a very great work and we need to do this. So in the future, things will be changed.
Thank you, Abdullah, for your deliberate answers. And I thank everyone who either wrote in the chat box or had a question or just for attending. And I'm afraid we're around like we're caught up with time. So Marie, would you like to take it from here?
Sure. Yeah, so much gratitude, Abdallah, to you, and please extend our gratitude to the CPT team in Abdallah. We definitely are so grateful for your work and for the partnerships that we get to join in to support you and your work. Thank you so much. I'm still thrown by the emojis. They still make me smile, even though we've been on Zoom for so many years. Like, thank you. Yeah, and thank you to all of you for joining us on our first day of celebration like this. We're hoping to do this again sometime. Have ways for us to gather as a community together, share our work, and share kind of the stories of that, the struggles, the ideas, and the things that bring us hope. So thank you so much. I'm going to put the donation link one more time in the chat, because this is also a day of supporting On Earth Peace's work. And so we're grateful for the ways that you have done that in your participation and financially today, and not just today. We know many of you support our work beyond today as well. So grateful to you all, wherever you are, whatever time zone it is. May you have a good rest of your day, whether it's sleeping or supper or relaxing off screen or whatever you get to do now. Just, yeah, blessings to you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
Hope
much.
to see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Wow, friend.
It was lovely meeting you all.
Yes, thank you. Arna, thank you so much for this idea and this day.
Thank you, Arna.
I should have said that when everybody was here, so we could have
No worries,
celebrated
no
you on the way out.
No worries. It's not, nothing is like, it's all of us together. Otherwise it would have never been happened. We can do it again, hopefully.
It's
Next
really
time.
wonderful. I just served my neighbor and Eric chapati. It was so good. Now we have no leftovers, so I have to cook it,
Yes.
and I can try the pan curry.
Bye-bye.
Bye.